All season, we've been amazed at what the 49ers were able to do with all of those injuries. Well, it finally caught up with them in the divisional round. Let's get into what's next for this team as they head into the offseason. So, Jeff, you and I talked about this so many times. This was a team that overachieved all season, and it felt like it came to a screeching halt against the Seahawks. But simply put, the Niners have to find a way moving forward on how to stay healthy.
Yeah, and, there's obviously this thing out there, that's getting a lot of run as far as, the practice
The
facility.
magnetic fields.
Yes,
But they're so injured that it's creating these conspiracy theories because it
certainly, but
truly is unbelievable.
certainly, and actually they had Delaney Walker, most people probably remember he played for the Titans, he was with the 49ers for a while, who said that these stories were around in, like, 14 and 15. So, we're talking
Wow.
10 and 11 years ago. So, first things first, if it's an issue, San Francisco, figure something out, okay?
Exactly.
It's not really the best idea, and obviously all this money you're gonna put into your team, you're not gonna reach the levels of success you're hoping for if this is
Right.
truly the case. Um, First off, yeah, I mean, the health, what do you do? I don't know if there's any way to truly, understand it, and when you're
I
talking,
know.
Achilles and, broken ankles, it's football. I mean, these things happen. Does it seem strange that maybe it happens to more to one team than maybe some others? I guess, but I mean,
And
who are
so many
getting
years in a row, it just
yeah.
feels like it's always compounding on each
I mean,
season.
look, neither one of us, are a doctor, nor did we stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. So neither one of us can truly answer these questions. There's smarter people who
Right.
can do that. So there's certainly things they have to figure. But we had a bad feeling about this game. We
Yes.
did, and because remember, we even tried to say, well, hey, you're maybe getting two guys back with losing Kittle. I mean, you
Yeah.
only got Williams. Obviously, Warner wasn't able to make it.
Right.
Shaheed, the opening kickoff for a touchdown. I mean, the smoke hadn't even settled yet on the pregame fireworks. There are pictures. You still
Yeah.
see the smoke around Rashid Shaheed. And this is also what we talk about playing in Seattle. Like, you can go in there
Yes.
and just basically get jumped and it's over. And that certainly
Mhm.
kind of felt like it. Um, San Francisco, they also have to evaluate some things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not saying Christian McCaffrey is not a huge part, of this team's plans going further, but we can't operate under a scope where you're going to expect Christian McCaffrey to be 85% of your offense. You know,
Exactly.
oh, we want to run. We're going to give it to him 25 times. Hopefully, we can throw it to him 8 times. Well, what do you think he's going to have left by the fourth quarter? I mean, he's not
Yeah.
21 or 22 years old anymore. You have some weird situations where you have a player like Brandon Ayuk, who you're paying money
Yes.
to. And I don't know if anybody, San Francisco 49ers, has seen him in maybe a calendar year.
Mhm.
You're going to have to figure something out in regards to George Kittle.
Yeah.
Where George is at in his career, even if he does make a full recovery, what is a full recovery? Does that mean he's still
Exactly.
George Kittle? Or does that mean he's an 85%, 80% George Kittle? Still good
Mhm.
enough to be a successful player in the NFL. For a team that relies so much on George Kittle, that is something that's going to have to be addressed. There are some things that I think were probably advantageous for them this year. They got to play a ton of young players on defense. And some of
Yes.
these kids played pretty good. So, you have some guys now on that defense who are going to come in year two and, challenge for starting jobs. Um, to do what they did in that division. And I think that deserves a lot of credit for San Francisco
Absolutely.
because, we have, you realize the division they just played in. And two of the three are going to the NFC Championship.
Exactly.
One of
And
them
3
was
made the playoffs.
playing for the NFC Championship. So,
Mhm.
for Seattle, yeah, it probably ends weird and it ends with a sour taste. But, you talk about what they were able to accomplish with what they were missing. And Trent Williams missed a boatload of time and Bosa. And I mean, we could break out the list.
Even Michael Williams, like, even with their
Exactly.
guys they're just bringing in.
100%. And, I think it's a true testament, obviously, to Shanny and his staff.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly, anybody who's considering Robert Saleh, who will now probably get a couple interviews for a head coaching job, it'll be credit to what he did, what these young players did under him this year.
Yes.
I think San Francisco, it's just time to, starting to think about what's maybe the next chapter. You know what your quarterback
Mm.
situation is, and I think you're more than intent with that. But, you're going to need a little bit more at running back. You're certainly gonna need more at the wide receiver position because I don't see how this
Mhm.
franchise moves on with Brandon Ayuk. And Ricky Pearsall's a nice player when he's there. but
He's had
you need
injury
more.
problems. Yeah.
He's another one. When your number one wide receiver in December and January is Demarcus Robinson, I think that tells you a lot.
Right.
Um, there's just so much that they gotta do, and I think defensively, I think they will mostly be okay, but I
Mm.
think it's gonna be time to start adding some more playmakers to this offense and some youth at the at the skill positions for this team. I f For any other reason, then guess what? We gotta play the Rams and we gotta play the Seahawks 4 more times next year.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
maybe the Rams could take a step back with Stafford, but I don't think Seattle's probably taking step back anytime soon. So,
Mhm.
for San Francisco, huge, huge loss Saturday night. There's no way around it. Just
Yeah.
absolutely got destroyed. But it shouldn't shadow, in my opinion, what was a really solid effort, certainly by the staff, certainly by the roster of what
Yeah.
San Francisco was able to do to get themselves into that Saturday night game that ended, unfortunately, the way it did.
Yeah, we talked about Kyle Shanahan and the job that he did, and you're right, Robert Saleh is such a big part of that. I do have to wonder if he will be on their staff next year, but I was looking at their depth chart to prepare for this, and there are a few things that do stand out for me. Obviously, the wide receiver one. You do want more depth on defense, notably pass rush and maybe corner help. But then I feel like you also probably want to increase your team speed on offense. Like, where do they go from a team building perspective next season? What are their top priorities here? Because you start to look around and yes, they did lose a bunch of the big guys, but there are still a lot of holes on this team outside of that. Even with all the injuries they were dealing with, there's a lot of holes on this team.
And that's the thing, coaching will only get you so far. Because
Exactly.
eventually when you get to these big games and, my 2nd and 3rd stringers, I can't coach them up to a level to defeat a Seattle Seahawk team. I
Mhm.
I just can't. They're just better players. I've tried every trick I've had to get us to this point. There's nothing more I can put. But yeah, in my opinion, it's certainly got to be something related to the wide receiver. Because the way I look at it,
Definitely.
and with Robinson and Jennings and Pearsall, we're talking about guys that are probably, I don't even know if there's a number 2 wide receiver there. I don't. So you're talking about a guy who is 3 guys who are 3, 4, and 5, basically trying to, cosplay as a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. It's just not gonna happen.
Right.
And, you can get it, and coaching can get you far enough, but it's not gonna get you to the ultimate end. You have your 2 top pass rushers, both coming off back off of injury.
Mhm.
Problem is you think hopefully Bosa comes back to at least be most of himself, which means 10 plus sack guy.
But we
With a
just
guy
don't
like
know that.
Williams with a guy like Williams, though, you don't even know what you had.
Right.
So even, he gets healthy. Okay, is he gonna be the pick we thought he was? Because we didn't get an opportunity to see enough to say, "All right, well, at least he was worthy of the pick." So,
Yes.
you have to add some pass rush, obviously. So,
Yeah.
it's probably gonna be, secondary pass rusher, and I've just gotta get some more juice, on the offensive side of the ball
Yeah.
because Seattle, it wasn't so much that they were just beating the daylights out of them. They were bigger, they were stronger, but they were also
Faster.
faster. That's
Yep.
the problem. When you got a safety
Exactly.
like Nick Mayor, who, basically could play middle linebacker and is faster than your tailback, that's when you really gotta say, guys, we need help," because they are just better than us in most phases, and that's gonna have to be a real, real thing that, San Francisco has to look at, and it's not an indictment on Shanahan, and it's, "Oh, man, you had great play call, you run a great scheme." Yeah, but everybody deserves some juice. Everybody needs a
Yeah.
Corvette every now and then, and it seems like the San Francisco 49ers offense needs a couple Corvettes.
Would you trade Mac Jones? Because he played so well that you and I had talked about this that I think he played his way into a starting role next year. But if I'm the Niners, this is really interesting to me because I think you could get a pretty good return. But with a team that is so injury prone, it's great to have depth, especially at the quarterback back position. Like I think of that team in particular, where in the NFC Championship game they're snapping back to Christian McCaffrey because they had lost every single one of their quarterbacks. So there is some QB trauma there. What do they do with Mac Jones?
You have Max basically under control for 1 year. The problem is you have Purdy obviously signed to his extension. Brock
Yes.
Purdy, once he got healthy, as well as Mac was playing, you needed Brock Purdy to come back and just play terribly for Mac to be in any consideration to have any type of future here, even on the 1 year he's on. 'cause it gets muddy. And the other thing is when you're an organization, you're dealing with agents, and that agent may be Mac Jones's agent. But you know what? There might also be 15 to 20 prospective players in the future that this guy's going to represent. You don't know that yet, but you kind of want to do like the right thing by your player.
Mm,
What is Mac Jones standing around in 2026 for San Francisco on the off bet of hoping, which is a terrible thought, that Brock Purdy needs a spell or he can't go? I think it was a great move to bring him in. And obviously, it was something I don't want to say it was premeditated, but there was definitely the links there between Mac Jones and Shanahan previously.
yes.
Eh, Also, but I'm San Francisco. If we're talking about getting these things, you need high picks. Or, is there a team out there who's got a wide receiver that I can use? Is there a team out there who's got a corner I can use? Because you really, if I'm San Francisco, because you look at what are some of your best assets. One of their best assets right now, if everything goes right in 2026, he would never take a snap. So if
Right.
I can get, and this is with Dante Moore going back to school, and we're looking very similar to last year's draft, where we know Fernando Mendoza is going to go one,
Mhm.
and maybe Ty Simpson goes in round one, too. If I'm San Francisco, if I can get a top 50 pick for Mac Jones, and you got the Cleveland Browns, you got all these teams, the New York Jets, all these
That's a
teams
good
who need
point.
quarterbacks. If I can get a top 50 pick, so I know I'm getting a top 6 or 7 wide receiver. I'm going to get a top 6 or 7 pass rusher. I gotta let him go. And I'll take the extra pick. I'll draft a quarterback on day 3. Shanahan can do it.
Oh,
We
yeah.
know if Shanahan, you just tell him, "Hey, go find me that guy on day 3 who's gonna work for you." Just like somehow, some way, somebody said, "Oh, hey, this kid out of Iowa State, Brock Purdy, I tell you what, he might be okay." So if you're Shanahan, you can develop a quarterback yourself. you know, I don't can't necessarily draft everything I need. So the way I can is to have as many more picks as I can. If I can get a phone call and I can get a second round pick for Mac Jones, I thank Mac for coming out and kind of like the whole, Minnesota Sam Darnold situation last year, let the kid go get a job for himself. And I
Mm.
think, for Mac Jones, it's been sort of a Sam Darnold like trend to this point. Let's get him somewhere else and let's see what he's capable of.